Okay, we are live. I'm going to make sure again that we're not sideways and not in the dark. We still don't have our technical team on site. It looks like we're good. I think we're going here. So welcome everyone to episode number 18. Can you believe it, Paul? 18 episodes already of our new show. And Inside the Junior A, where we give you a behind the scenes look on what goes into building a youth hockey club whose mission is that together we can make youth hockey a life-changing experience. Last week as always, if you're watching live on the replay, I hope the feed's coming through here. It looks like it's a little bit slow on my phone here. But as always, whether you're watching live or via the replay, we really appreciate you giving us some comments in the comment section, liking and sharing the episode. And we do go back and check the comments. Even a lot of people are watching the show via the replay because they might be at work or something during the day here. So leave us comments live. I'll be checking them on the phone here. And if you leave us comments when you're watching on the replay or likes there, we really appreciate that. And we'll get back to your questions as we go through it before next week's show. So this week, we're continuing an episode we started last week, which was what it means to be a USA Hockey Model Association. And we have that on our website and things like that. We talked to people about it, but we wanted to really clarify what the ADM is, what the American Development Model from USA Hockey is, why it was established in the first place. We talked about it. Actually, a lot of people think of ADM being about 8U cross ice hockey because that was a major change they made when they changed from full ice hockey to 8U level to cross ice. But it's much bigger. It actually comes from the top. It comes from the National Team Development Program. It comes from the NHL, the U.S. Olympic Committee. We talked about how it's been spread now to other sports at the U.S. Olympic Committee. I just got back from speaking at U.S. Lacrosse, who's launching their ADM Model Club program, and all these other sports that are beginning the ADM programming. We talked about how it is an LTAD, long-term athlete development program. And then we talked about our story a little bit as far as what we were, and that those moments for us, that gut check moments for us when we decided we had to change everything and adopt the principles of the ADM Model Association and what we did to do that, and then some of the results that we saw with the actual development environment experience for the players and families. And this week we wanted to get into some of those specifics of what those changes are and what that means for the players and the families. Paul, I was a little bit longer-winded than I planned on, but anything to add to that?
Well, I think it just shows how important the ADM is and how much impact it's made in our lives and in kids' lives. And it gives every kid a chance for success and reach their genetic potential. I think the thing to look at is there's no other programming. It's not like, okay, we can do the ADM model or we can do the CDA model.
Yeah.
There's no other model. Yeah. The one other consistent model we see in youth sports is trying to win at all costs.
Yeah.
So there's no real competing model. So that's when, if you take a step back, some people don't understand the ADM, right? So it's initially, wow, this is no good. I don't know what it is or whatever. If you take a step back and look at the spectrum of youth sports, there's no other real programming.
Yeah.
So the ADM model was world-leading elite training program. Yeah. So I think that's important to remember, and it's important for all of us to remember that sometimes when you're just focused on maybe just a single game, right? You're focused on the totality of someone's growth over their whole hockey career. So it's important to remember that.
And we've heard this before a little bit too, is that, so ADM, again, what it is, it's age-appropriate long-term athletic development. So if you're running a youth program that you're not following the ADM model, so you're not doing what's right for that age group. So then what are you doing? Either you have no maybe awareness about it, or would you purposely do something that's wrong for that age group? So it's interesting. We've heard things before, but if it's misunderstood or misguided, we've heard, we're going to do ADM once a week.
Yeah.
So we're going to do age-appropriate development for the kids once a week, but the other times we're going to do what? What is it that we're going to do?
The other times a week that a program would say would be, that it comes down to it's really for the adult.
Right.
It's adult-centered, right? So it's for the coach for the short term of winning the game or whatever sport you're playing is. It's for the coach.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that's wrong. Right?
Yeah. If you're
athlete-centered, it has to be.
If you're in youth sports of any magnitude, right, whether it's recreational or competitive elite, hockey, lacrosse, soccer, whatever it is, if you're not doing what's best for that particular age group athlete for the long term. What are we doing here, right? It's got check time to say what the purpose of this whole thing is. So that's what the ADM model is. It's actually coming out with something that's, hey, here's a guide. If you, because USA Hockey believe that people involved in youth hockey want what's best for the kids, are involved because they love hockey, they love the kids, and they love to help them grow and give back and give them opportunities in the future. So here's a model that you can follow to make sure that you're doing that. So we saw that, we embraced it, we want to do that, we want to do the best job we can at that, so we embraced it and we've learned about it. So I do have we mentioned last time on admkids.com is the USA Hockey ADM website, and on there's an application that goes through the specifics of what it means to be a model club and what you have to meet to even be considered to be approved as being a model club by USA Hockey. Paul, let me just check to make sure this is... It looks like it's going. Okay. My phone isn't showing very well, but Karina, it says Karina Paquette's watching. So hi.
Great. Hey, Karina.
So it looks like we're going still. So there's the ideal, right? The ideal is that every club would be delivered ADM programming. Sure. We would like to see that too. It's not just we only want to be the ones we want to see hockey grow. We want to see kids grow in the opportunities, and we want to see the program that do what's right for kids all over. But there's the reality of it's hard to make some of these changes. There's logistics and there's things, depending on how your club or your rink or whatever it is set up, it can be challenging to implement the things to be at a point to become a model association. There's a reason why there's only 21 across the United States. There's 2,500 clubs in the United States and there's 21 model associations, because it's a big shift for a lot of people, and some people aren't able to make those changes.
Yeah, and I think going through the application today, some of the points is we'll dive into why it's so hard to make those changes, right? It seems like, well, on the surface it seems easy. We'll just do what's right for the kids, right? Yeah. Okay, and just follow this plan. But it's not necessarily that easy, and I think you'll see some of the changes and how some of the organizations are structured around youth sports in general makes it challenging at times.
Right. So the process is you get this application on the site, you go through it, and you see if you want to and are able to make those changes within your club or association. At that point, you have communication with USA Hockey, the national office. You let them know that you want to become this model association and you're going to be making these changes. At that point, their staff will be making site visits and things like that to actually see how you implement it, help you implement it, to see if you're able to deliver the programs the way they feel would be a model association, deliver world-leading development programs for kids. It's not about how many games your teams win. It's not about having AAA or the elite levels of hockey. It's about your development experience and your skill to develop hockey players and to teach the game of hockey and sports more than anything else.
Yeah, and the size of the club doesn't matter, right? They came out
smaller clubs, there's big clubs, right?
Right, they came out several times to monitor us, to watch us, to probably to judge us, right, on how we're doing things a couple of years back and to assess where we're at. And then we went through that process and then finally became one.
And the cool thing is now that we are a model club, they visit us still 3-4 times a year, and we still have time with our coach. They evaluate our practices, they give us feedback, tell us which things can be better. We ask a bunch of questions. These are challenging things we're having, and we get help in making our program even better because we can always improve.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
So first of all, on the application, there's an overall section that's requirement and recommendations for the overall organization. So I'll go through a few of those points at the start here. Number one is have a hockey director who is involved in the implementation of the ADM. So they want to make sure there's someone ultimately responsible for the overall programming of the organization to make sure that ADM is being implemented, and that person has a level of background and experience that allows them to, in the game of hockey, to be able to really understand how to develop hockey players at a high level. So that for us has been Paul. Yeah. And so some organizations have a lot of professional coaches and things, and others have volunteers. So they need someone in place that really has the knowledge and background to be able to that USA Hockey can turn to and make sure that they trust that person in delivering the program and across the board.
Yeah, and just on that, Ben, I think and going into the why and why that's so difficult is I think the structure of a lot of organizations are different. We've talked a little bit about this before. Most of the structure out there is a lot of individual coaches, right? So, and they have, some of them have great experience, right? And they've been doing things for a long time and played college or maybe even that National Hockey League.
Yeah.
And they're coaching like they were, how they were coaching.
Well, they're coaching
college.
their team, right?
Yeah,
Don't tell them what to do with their team, right?
Right. And they're doing what they did in college, and they recruit a lot of high-end talent, so they have a lot of success maybe on the scoreboard, but they may necessarily not be doing everything age appropriate, right? So in our organization, we're all unified, right? We have a united staff structure, which allows us to, what we developed is our curriculum, right? And that's been able to implement the ADM philosophies in that curriculum. We're all under the same umbrella, and that's been the difference. We've gone to the age group leaders, right? And that's been a difference, right? It's not all individual coaches. We have guys with experience that are oversee, an age group or a couple age groups, so they're all pushing in the right direction. We're all working together. So if you're start as an 8U player, you can go through and progress through the program all the way up to 18 and under, and you'll have obviously different coaches throughout that experience, but it'll be all under the same philosophy.
Under the ADM philosophy, and that seems simple, but that's where it's done easy. A lot of maybe other clubs, and the way we were before was that this coach has this philosophy, and that coach has that philosophy, and this coach practices this way, and that coach practices this way. We want our people to come inside and talk together and share ideas and things, but ultimately, we're going to be doing what's age appropriate, long-term athlete development, and what's best for kids. We're going to go to the USA Hockey trainings and those things, and we're going to maybe adjust some drills or things like that to make them work, better or faster or whatever that is. But where it's all ADM philosophy, or you can't coach here.
And I think years ago, we even had trouble having a coaches meeting. Just to try to get everyone to come and meet with the president and talk about the overall plan for the organization, and that rarely happened. Right now, we have leadership meetings, we have weekly staff meetings, we have weekly age group meetings, we have all these different weekly meetings with different staff along in the organization to try to improve and make it the best experience possible for the players and families.
And have that united philosophy, like you said. It's as you age up through the organization, you're going to have, that if you believe in age-appropriate long-term development for your child, that you're going to have that at every step of the way, at every age group that you get to, regardless of which particular coach and things you have.
Yeah, and I think and we can move on here, but I think the real point of the organization is we're thinking on how we can improve, so we can improve the experience of the kids and the families. Mm-hmm. And that's a big difference. It's intentional, right? There's thought behind this, and we're trying to progress every year. And I think I can say, look in the mirror, that we have improved every year. And is everything perfect? No, and that's why we'll continue to strive to make it better.
Sure, right. So we touched on a couple of other points here. So the first requirement was having the hockey director involved, the ADM, have age division coordinators who oversee practice planning and off-ice training. So the thing there, right, is that we want not only just because someone played in the NHL or professional hockey, college, junior hockey, whatever that is, doesn't mean right away they can come in and coach 10 and unders. They have to have an understanding if they're going to, a few things we did. Number one, with the age coordinators, they're not just the guy that played pro hockey isn't only coaching the A team and then he doesn't care about the B team, right? A 10-year-old is a 10-year-old, and a 10-year-old on the B team could end up becoming the top player, better than any of the players in the A team. If we don't know, they're young, if we give them the right development experience, everything's possible for all of them, and to have good experiences and to become the best players that they can be. So that person, that age coordinator, needs to be versed in what's best to develop that age group, regardless of what level those players, and they need to have crossover and work with all the players from that age group so that we're offering that consistent development experience and plan for that entire age group, not just one group of players or the other, and they have to have that knowledge in that.
Yeah, and that doesn't matter. That doesn't mean that it's important that the programming at the 10U level is the same programming whether you're on the B team or the BB team. Yeah. Right? It doesn't matter that. It doesn't mean that the BB team isn't going to progress as far, right? Within the structure, they may advance, some of the BB players, the A players may advance faster at some of the drills and some of the curriculum than the B players, for example. But it doesn't mean that the A players are treated way better than the B players, right? Or they're looked upon differently or get less coaching or get lower level coaching. They get the same programming. They just may progress through at different rates, just like players would progress through different rates individually, right? So it's really key component that every kid gets the same type of coaching and same type of programming, and what the kids put into it is what they'll get out of it.
Yeah, they all need that same opportunity, right? And the teams are separated based on competitive play on the games for the weekends, which is, as we know, 20% or less of the overall program at the youth level when it comes down to the actual training environment. After that is have a commitment to conducting age-appropriate off-ice training. Again, potential logistical challenge for clubs. So the first two, and the hockey director and the age group coordinators, total different change of the model of their staff, of having coaches involved in a whole age group, number one. And sometimes what we would have at our club before we became this model, we may have a coach he's got his team at the 10 and under A team, and then he has a 16 double A team, and another coach has an 8 and under B team and a 14 double A team, and those are their teams. And so the differences between the two 10 and under coaches are completely different, but also that coach may have some, maybe they do well with the older age group, but they're applying the same things to that younger age group. So it's just totally all over the place. So for a club to change that structure and say, and also what you've seen in the past with the other model is coaches who, they stay with that team forever, right? They start with an 8 and under or 10 and under team, and they go up with them every single year, which, you know, you might think can be good in some ways, but to have someone that's actually an expert in those particular age groups and only working with those age groups and becoming great at coaching those age groups, and then having a healthy way for those players to progress to the next expert in that age group can be much better for the long-term development and experience, but also hard for a club to make those changes.
Yeah, and I think a couple points there, Ben. It's really healthy for people to have different coaches, right? As they move on and progress, as they grow, it's important they have different experience with different coaches. And just the logistics side of the off-ice stuff, there is always challenges with logistics of amount of coaches and the volunteer coaches and all these things that we deal with on a daily basis. But the difference is what we have is we have the United Staff structure, right? We have a great volunteer base of people that help us out. I want to say thank you to them right now if they're listening, or if anyone's listening. They do a great job with us. But there's a structure built there, right? There is a curriculum, right? And that's the key. Like a lot of other organizations may have some great volunteers, but they may not have a structure there to follow, right? There's no plan, there's no nothing, right? So it's important that obviously all our coaches and our lead people are involved on a daily basis, and then we have to count on some of the volunteers sometimes and work alongside us to give the kids the best experience and use that curriculum to give them the best athletic development.
And so on that point about the commitment to off-ice training, what we saw in the past too was sometimes some teams would have it, or some of the older elite teams might have it, but not all the teams would have it. And so it's just as important for the 8 and under B team, or the 10 and under B team, or 10 and under BB team, or 12 and under A team, or double A team, for all these teams to have athletic performance training as part of their physical literacy and things as part of their athletic development. That's our responsibility as an athletic club to develop their long-term athletic potential, and to have that part of the programming is essential.
Yeah, and at the 8 and under level, you're talking twice a week, 20 to 30 minutes, right? And it goes up a little bit as we go on the age groups, right? But it's the other side of it, besides developing them as an athlete, is that relationship they get with each other, that experience. It's the whole experience of hanging out before practice, doing some fun stuff, especially the 8 and under, 10 and under, 12, and the youth kids, right? They're doing a lot of body weight stuff, and then as they get in the 14s, 16s, 18s, there's some weights, there's some other stuff there where they're lifting a little bit, right? But it's that whole team experience and that age group experience that's important, that develops the kids as a group, and they start to really make all these different friendships. And at the end of the day, right, we know that experience is really critical to them to continue on, is that they love coming to the rink because, hey, Johnny's there today, I get to do off-ice with my friend, and it's a real fun time for them.
Great. Okay, and then the next point here, requirement, all practice and game schedules must be approved by the hockey director. So we have season plans for all of our teams. So again, the other model, all the coaches kind of have their own plan for their individual teams. We have a season plan for all of our age groups up front with what that plan is for the year, how many, approximately how many games, how many weeks of practices, how many tournaments or camps, things like that. And that's all approved from our hockey director at the top, so that in the past, like I said, in our own club before we became a model association, one team, my team, is going to Minnesota for their tournament, and the other one's going to start a month early and be practicing and whatever, these types of things. And so these plans and some of those things are not going to be age appropriate or follow ADM guidelines. So all of our team plans have to be approved by our hockey director and come to the top.
And some of the logistics of that is right. So you see some coach wants to take his 10-year-old team to Minnesota because he thinks it's a great tournament, which it may be a great experience, right? But then they also want to jam in 20 other exhibition games. Now there's over competition. Really, then it comes down to logistics and financial commitment, right? So that you join this squirt team and then a month in the season you find out you're going to Minnesota. Well, that's probably another couple $1,000, right? As a family to go there.
School now,
so you're missing school.
practice.
You're missing actually hockey development, which we know that it's more development happens in practice, and the amount of finances you're putting into that experience is crazy at this age group, right? There's always time to travel and play and all these other tournaments once they hit an older age when it makes sense. But at these younger ages, it's important that we have some sort of control and programming on it, or they, like we said, there'd be people doing things that weren't best for the player. It's what they kind of wanted to do.
Right. And the next part is maintain consistent communication with USA Hockey staff. We talked about that, the visits that we have every year, about our program, making adjustments and things like that. Document and submit practice plans for the season for each team in the association on a monthly basis to your ADM regional manager. So again, just for some clubs to get all the coaches to commit to writing down their practice plans and submitting them would be a big challenge, because to be honest, we know because we've been there. We had a lot of coaches, and these guys played pro hockey and college hockey. It's not like they weren't good hockey people, but they didn't have written down practice plans and things. So how would we even submit that? Well, and how different would they all be?
Well, it's common practice, Ben, still, because I'm out there, I see different rinks and see different coaches. It's common practice for most youth hockey coaches to have no plan going into an on-ice practice. Not have a practice plan, and usually what happens is they revert back to what they've been doing all the time, or doing what they were coached, and I've seen it before where they just basically do the same practice almost the entire year. Or they're very reactionary and they plan the practice exactly what happened in the result on Sunday, right? So once again, it gets back to the short term, or there's just not knowledge of what's best for kids, right? So they go out there and they're basically winging it, and there's not a plan, and there's not even a practice plan in sight. They don't even have anything written down. And that's the big difference, is when we've put together this curriculum, we have the practices planned for the season, and we're doing what's best for the kids at the right time. And you come to our practice, you can see practice plans posted on the glass and that kind of thing. You can go on the internet and see all practice for the year and see what we're going to do. And is there adjustments and slight changes throughout the year? Of course. And is there evolution for the curriculum over every year? And is there a gathering with our leaders and our age group leaders to decide on what's best? Of course there is, right? And that's how we get better every year. But it's amazing to me that there's coaches go on the ice and they just kind of wing it, right? And at our level and in the amount of time, finances people are paying, we deserve to give them the best experience possible, the most activity, the most development, and that's why there's that planning ahead of time.
Right, and so the last couple here is conduct a coaches meeting at least once per month for all head coaches. You talked about the meetings and things we have already. Conduct an end of the year review and planning meeting for the upcoming season in conjunction with USA Hockey regional manager, and submit a plan for future improvements. You touched on that. So I want to go into, it's great. So these are some of the things that you actually have to do to become a model club, and then go into that evaluation process. There's a number of things that are required at specific age groups now. So we have about 6 or 7 minutes. So a lot of them are similar across the board. So at the 8U level, 10U level, and 12U level, all of them talk about utilizing USA Hockey station-based practice plans and guidelines for per the ADM age-specific stage documents. So all for 8U, 10U, and 12U levels. All of them talk about having no single team practices and having all shared ice practices. So Paul, why don't you speak a little bit about why USA Hockey, again funded by the NHL, US Olympic Committee, best for developing players, why they require to be a model club station-based practices and no single team practices at the 8U, 10U, 12U levels.
Yeah, a couple thoughts. One, the activity is so important in a practice, right? So the amount of times you're doing something, right? Whether you're skating, puck handling, in a competitive battle, we know that from learning and understanding what learning is and how you learn is you can be told something, and that's okay. You can actually see someone do it, and that's a little bit better. Yeah. But to do is the best way to learn. And we talk about motor skills learning and talk about that guided discovery. So, if a kid's just standing in line and, Coach Paul with all this hockey knowledge is just telling them all what to do for the next 5 or 10 minutes, it's really not helping them at all.
Yeah.
The retainment level, they're not retaining very much, right? So they're not getting better. Cognitively, they're not really understanding what you're even saying. And that's why sitting at a board and drawing out the practice plans or the actual drill. I've seen it at the highest levels, the pro levels. I've seen this before where, an NHL coach is on the board drawing out the drill, and then they go and, one of the players asks, hey, do you know what we're doing?
Yeah.
The guy's like, oh, I have no idea. I'll go to the back of the line, right? So they don't have, even at the highest level, they don't know. And I was listening to an interview by Ken Hitchcock who talk about how the activity and the tempo of practice is critical. Spending very little time at the board, really up-tempo, energy, and why that's critical at the youth levels, we know they learn by doing, right? So if you go to just a single team practice, say you have anywhere from 10 to 15 kids on a team, and you go to a full sheet. So now what that does is, one, it's a waste of ice time because it tempts you as a hockey coach to do what you see during the game, the 5-on-5 game. And the risk of that is that you're not going to get enough reps, and you're not going to get enough good reps. So you could go to a full ice practice with 12 squirts, right? Yeah. And they could skate the full length of the ice. One, that's not the right window they're open to for them to actually get better in skating, right? And two is they're not going to be able to execute these full plays and stuff, and they'll not get enough execution time, right? They may complete 10 or 12 passes throughout the whole practice when you could put them in a quarter of the ice, right? And put them in a highly competitive environment, and they may have to complete 10 or 12 passes in 10 minutes, right, of a quarter, 1/6 of the ice time, right? And think about time and space. If you talk about hockey, at the highest levels, they talk about time and space, right? If you're defending a good player, you want to take away his time and space. Well, open up a big sheet. Does that open up the amount of time and space? Yes, way more time and space now. So people aren't under duress, right? They're not under pressure, right? So if you shrink the ice time, you can improve the amount of activity, you can improve the amount of competition, the amount of time you're under pressure, and now you can follow the windows of trainability that they're most open to. So I know there's a lot there. I dove into it kind of all over the place, but it really shows you why stationary practices are so much better for kids.
And the tempo, like you said, massively goes up with the energy of the kids. If you're missing 2 or 3 kids from the practice, your whole practice isn't messed up. I can't imagine, like Pee-wee level, even you have one team. Even to run a full ice Pee-wee practice with 12 players to keep that tempo up and use the whole ice, almost impossible. And you're missing a couple of kids or something like that, or you're missing a goalie. There's only so much you can do. But also, so one of the other requirements here for all those age groups is the practice to game ratio. 2 practices to 1 game minimum at the 8U level, and 3 practices to 1 game minimum at the 10U and 12U level. And for most clubs, and ours included before, were set up to have 2 practices a week because they weren't sharing the ice well enough. So to actually even get to the right amount of touches on the ice that we need for the kids to get their maximum training environment from, and to do it without raising costs too much, we have to be able to share practices and use the ice efficiently. We have to bring the age groups together so that we can develop all the players under a united plan with our age group manager. We would raise the tempo, reduce the space, right? And so that's shared practices, station-based practices allows you to do that versus that kind of old school approach. Every team gets their own practice and they work on their team things.
And that doesn't mean you don't do game-related thing. It's actually the complete opposite, right? And that's why we've broken our practices into 3 types of practice. There's a skill and sense practice, right? There's a habits practice as they get to the older age groups, and then there's a sense and systems, which is a lot of smaller games. So it's all game related, right? And even at the 12U level, there's time where they play 5-on-5 in practice, and they're in one end of the ice, right? And then there's something else going on the other end, so it's still station based, but they're doing exactly 5-on-5. And if you just did 5-on-5 for a whole practice, sure, you're not going to get enough reps, not enough puck touches, not enough individual skill development, right? So that's why it's not done always like that, right? But is there times in practice when you can break that down and do that? Of course there is, and that's why the curriculum is built in a certain way, right? So there's focus on individual skill improvement, which is critical for people's success, right? There's focus on team and system concepts, which is critical as to function in a team environment. So there's those 2 elements that are really critical for kids' development.
You do a ton within that, right? So I want to conclude with, because we're at 2:30 here, but with some the other major similarities between 8U, 10U, and 12U age group as far as requirements for being a model club. Now keep in mind, this is for the lowest, the entry levels in these age groups, the B teams, but even the highest levels, a squirt A team, a Pee-wee AA or a Pee-wee AAA team, which Pee Wee AAA actually doesn't exist nationally. Some of the local places there's a league for it. But any level, highest level, medium, entry level of this age group, these are requirements to become a model club. And I want you to think about why those might be, no matter how high the level. They all, like I mentioned, the practice to game ratios. I mentioned the shared ice practices and no single team practices. They also all have equal playing time as a requirement. So it could be AA hockey. Equal playing time is a requirement. They all mention limited roster sizes. So 11 to 12 skaters at the squirt level. Okay, 12 to 15 at the Pee Wee level. So again,
and 8 to 10 at the 8U level.
8 to 10 at the 8U
no
level.
Full-time goalies.
No full-time goalies. No player ups from 8U to 10U full ice.
Yeah.
Okay, no players up from Pee Wee to Bantam into checking. Okay, and so you can see why also some of these other logistical things of limited roster sizes that affects, and single team, shared team practices that affects clubs' budgets and ways they plan out how they set their dues and how they pay their coaches and these types of things, because maybe they didn't used to having a budget based on 15 skaters on a 10 and under team and a full sheet of practice. So how do they make those changes, and maybe challenging for them to do those types of things and meet those requirements.
Yeah, and the equal playing time, we talked a little bit last time, the equal playing time and the roster sizes can affect winning and losing sometimes, right? And having the perspective of you may lose some games but be able to play everyone, or have a shorter roster, and understanding that you're doing what's best for the kids in the long term, and if they stick through it, right, they'll improve that way.
And if you're a coach who's works at a club, and if your team doesn't win, you might get fired because of it at the 12 and under level, or you might lose your team to the other guy that's at the club recruiting them or whatever. Then it's maybe even harder structurally for you to follow these guidelines, equal playing time. It's also recommended at all those age groups that all the players get to try other positions and play different roles and things like that too, which again focuses on the long-term development of those kids for their full potential in hockey development.
Right, and then when you hit the 14, 16, 18U, right, that's what we've talked about before, is right, there's still always the ADM programming and practices, right, but then some of the ice time can change, right?
Starts to evolve,
right.
yeah, right. So the point of the ADM is that it's different at every age group.
Yeah.
It evolves each way. It's age appropriate. As you get into the learning to compete stages and things, and the Bantam and midget tier hockey, there's some situational hockey. There's some accountability for performance and things like that. So there's bigger roster sizes. There's less teams per ice surface.
Yeah.
There's different things you're in the off ice training. Like I said, maybe there's some weight training and some things like that versus games and stuff at the young, or races and things like that at the young level. So we got into almost not quite all of it today, but some really good stuff. As always, thank you very much for watching Inside the Junior Reign, where together we can make youth hockey a life-changing experience. We really appreciate your comments, your likes, your shares on the show, so we can spread our message and our mission to others. And love to hear some of your comments or questions before next week's show. We're back on next Monday at 2 p.m. Pacific time for episode number 19.
All right.
Okay, thanks guys.